Welcome to part 26 of Was I in a Cult? So somewhere between like 3 and 6 months, I was starting to be raised up to be a leader in the church. The pastor's daughter, who was my Bible study leader at the time, was really encouraging me to start my own Bible study, and she started to train me to do that because what they wanted to do was send out some people from their Bible study to start their own Bible studies, and I was one of those people. Also, around that same time, the women's ministry was actually having these large regional discipleships where a lot of churches from local churches, like all within one county, would come together, and we would have these sort of in-depth discipleship training meetings for women. And what they were doing is they were having some of the newer people do sermonettes, which was like a short 5-minute sermon. And so I remember noticing that they were doing that. Like I went and I saw like they would always have like a couple of people that would come and give a sermon, and I thought, wow, that's something I think that I would want to do. Like I feel like I am called to preach the word of God, and so I thought, wow, this is something I really am interested in. So since my Bible study leader was, super encouraging of me starting my own Bible study, I thought the best thing I could do is, get some experience. And I just remember that after the one of the discipleship services, I went up to the person that was heading that discipleship. She was like the church pastor's wife from the church that was hosting the event, and so I asked her. I said, "Hi," I said, "I'm Shannon. I'm from the Mother Church, and I'm really interested in being able to give a sermonette." And she was like, "That's great. That's awesome. Like, I'm so glad that you're interested in doing that. I'll go ahead and talk to some of your leadership about it and see what we can do." We left it on a really positive note. And then I thought, oh, this is cool. Maybe I'll get to do one of these sermonettes, right? So after the whole event is over, I go to the car, the van that we were all in, and there's about maybe at least 7 of us in this van. And as we're getting in the van and everybody's getting settled and stuff, one of the leaders in the church, she was like an older lady, and she was somewhat like considered like over all of us, like kind of like an authority figure within the church. And she turned around to all of us and she's like, "Do you guys know that someone had the nerve to ask if they could do a sermonette?" I'm sitting there kind of cowering in the corner because I'm the one that asked. And I'm just sitting there like, what's the problem with that? And then she's like, "That is so wrong. I can't believe that someone would have the nerve to ask to give a sermonette. Like, that's an honor. Someone has to wait to be asked to give a sermonette. How dare them do that?" Instead of pulling me aside in a gentle manner and saying, "I know you're new. I know you don't know the protocol and the way we do things here, but generally it's not a good thing to ask. It's better to be asked to do something of leadership within the church, especially if you're a female." But no, I was indirectly rebuked in front of an entire church van and just was so confused, and I just didn't even know what I did wrong. I didn't know it was against the church rules to ask to do public speaking. Like, I saw girls that were like on my, that got saved and came in the church the same time as I did, And they were doing the sermonettes, so I thought, well, why can't I do one, when I assumed that most girls that wanted to do something would ask to do something. You know, just like if you're in a job, right, and you want to get a promotion and you want to learn, then you ask if you can learn these new things, or if you could do this new thing and take this new challenge on. That's the way I perceived it. Apparently, that was a really bad thing. Ironically, about a week later, I'm pulled aside by the pastor's wife in our church, and she asks me to do a sermonette. I'm like, I should have just kept my mouth shut, because I was going to be asked regardless to do the sermonette. So I was confused, because I was like, they want you to show initiative, but then when you do, you get rebuked. And then you're just supposed to humbly wait for someone else to ask you to do something. So then I was confused, because when I approached the leader at the actual event and asked her if I could do a sermonette, she seemed like it was like the greatest thing that I was asking. She was like, oh, that's so awesome. I'm so glad. You know, I'll definitely talk to someone about it. She didn't say anything like, oh, you shouldn't ask, you know, like you're supposed to be waiting to be asked. And I'm like, I was so thrown by that. And I was thinking, first of all, I felt humiliated. You know, first of all, I was being rebuked in front of all of these people, except for nobody really in the van knew who it was. They just knew it was one of us. Like, one of us from the mother church, because we were the only ones there from the mother church. So out of all of us, one of us asked, and I'm grateful that they didn't like just straight up rebuke me and in front of everybody directly. I'm glad that it was an indirect rebuke, but at the same time, everyone in our group was like getting a lesson that you never ask to do things. What was even more embarrassing is that like a lot of the girls were like looking at each other like, oh my gosh, I can't believe someone would do that. Like, who would do that? Oh my gosh, that's awful. And oh my gosh, like everyone was saying that, and I'm just like quiet, and I'm like, they're pretty much gonna probably realize that it's me. And then I was thinking, did the lady tell her someone in your church, or did she say who I was? Did she say there was a blonde girl that came up to me and asked? And I was pretty much like the only blonde girl in the church, so it was pretty obvious who it was. And so they could have came to me directly. I don't know. I don't know if she just said, I don't want to tell you who, I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but maybe talk to all your girls and tell them that they shouldn't be doing this, they shouldn't be asking. Maybe she knew, maybe she was told who it was, because I did tell her my name probably, and I just felt betrayed by that pastor's wife, that instead of telling me herself that it was wrong, she decided to tell my leader, basically rat me out to my leader, and have my leader basically embarrass me in front of my entire group, even though I wasn't directly embarrassed. Still, I don't think it was done appropriately. I felt betrayed, I felt hurt, I felt humiliated. I was being so encouraged to go into leadership, and, you know, being encouraged, you know, that people saw that I was going to, you know, be a speaker and things like that. Like, people would tell me these things, but then when I wanted to do it, I was being told that I was wrong for asking. None of it made sense. I did resolve at that point in time that I was never going to ask for anything else in that church. If you're being rebuked for stupid things like that, then you're probably in a cult that's controlling and dominating, and they just want to rule over you. I think this lady even said that I had pride. Like, she was like, how prideful of that person to ask. I don't know. It was embarrassing. It was unnecessary. I'm out of time. I'm pretty irritated talking about this story, though. Who knew 30 years later I'd still have feelings about this? And that, my friend, is an example of verbal and emotional abuse within the church. I mean, cult.